All right. Welcome, everybody. My apologies. We're getting started a few minutes late here. We had a couple of little technical glitches there. If you could go ahead, throw your name and where you're from up in the chat. Today, we're going to talk about closing deals like a boss. So we're going to talk about some techniques and examples as we go through today. Again, we've been using the Sales Bible as a guide. So if you haven't read the book, I'd highly recommend it. Lots of great tips and best practices in that book. We're going to kind of do a bit of an overview of the whole sales process, kind of circle back a little bit on things we've talked about. I'm going to move fairly quickly, but also just wanted to kind of recap because we've been at this sales intensive for a number of weeks and we've covered a lot of ground. So I thought we could kind of do a quick overview. And then, if you have missed any of the recent mastermind sessions the past few weeks, keep in mind you can always access those on the Landscape Disruptors channel or on the LMN YouTube channel. Now, a couple things to keep in mind as we kind of kick this off. Ultimately, we have to be really good at closing business for, obvious reasons. Number one, we want to grow revenue. And so, it's kind of easy for us to say that we want to be great closers so that we grow the business. But, we want to look a little bit deeper at that and think about all the impact that being the best at closing is really going to have on the company. Now, first off, naturally, when you get really good at closing, you can close better customers who have better opportunities, bigger jobs, more complex jobs, maybe more jobs, or clients that are more likely to be high retention clients, customers that are less price conscious and more focused around value and capability. And so when you get really good at sales and you get really good at closing, you end up with all of the best customers. And so generally, the secret to really creating an incredible company is get the absolute best customers and the absolute best employees, and you'll probably have a great business outcome. And so, I think it's pretty important to think if we're good at selling the best customers, the best services, that gives us the opportunity to be able to afford to pay people higher wages, invest more in training and career development, invest more in people. And so, getting really good at closing has a pretty big impact on the business in all kinds of ways that we may, often kind of know, but not really think about enough. If we've got a workforce problem, you're short staff, maybe it has more to do with your ability to sell and close the right business than you think, because great companies have great customers that afford them the opportunity to get more profitable work that can also afford them higher wages. And so ultimately, we have to think about the impact that closing has on every aspect of the business. Our employees are going to be a lot happier when they're well paid and they've got great customers and great contracts, but they're also going to feel safer knowing that they've got this sales team or this company who is so good at producing sales that there's just a steady pipeline of work and they don't ever have to be concerned about being out of work, being short on work, or, maybe the company health being a little up and down. I think a couple things just to recap as we approach, this conversation specifically about closing is knowing the customers that you're working for. Now, we've spent quite a bit of time lately talking about ideal customer profiles or ICP. There's a lot that goes into creating really good customer profiles, understanding their needs, understanding their specific pain points to that type of customer, whether it's residential or commercial. And then within those categories, there's all kinds of different specific customers with very different pain points. So we need to really understand who we're working for and what their pain points are likely to be, and then how to map that over to unique way of selling and explaining value and actually creating value with the way that we operate our businesses. So a key component of that is this ability to build rapport or build trust as early as possible in the conversations that we're having with prospects and even existing customers. And so here what we want to do is we want to get really good at being able to show how much better we are at doing what we do than everybody else that they're going to talk to or consider or look at in the market. And obviously building rapport, happens in many different ways. Some of it is like our brand is actually doing some of the work for us long before we get there. A lot of our rapport building is the way that we answer the phone, the way that we respond to messages, the way that we handle the initial meeting, the way that we ask our first questions, and the way that we share, information about our business specifically. So getting really good at establishing this trust and credibility, this comes from many, many different initiatives in your business. Everything from the website to the way that you present your brand, the way that you just explain to people what you do and how you help people solve their problems. And so lots of effort to go into this. We had a weekly mastermind just on building rapport. And, as you get that rapport and that early trust in your conversations and you get the opportunity to spend time with customers or prospects, you start to have to, uncover their specific needs and pain points really well. And then you need to kind of build some momentum by sharing a little bit of insight and being that trusted advisor or expert. So we want to be really good at qualifying people. And then what we want to do is we want to understand how to ask questions to uncover their needs and kind of create a little bit of desire in our prospects. And so the better the questions, the more desire. And when they kind of show some desire for what we're talking about, then we can layer in some educational advice, let them know how we do things, let them understand what best practices look like, what makes us different, how we're doing things maybe a little bit differently than others in our space. And so we get really good with this Q&A, then I think what happens is it gets us the right to present a proposal. And, I think if we start to look at our proposals more like solutions, our prospects start to look at it that way as well. The point of being in sales shouldn't just be to get more revenue. The point should be to help people find solutions to their problems. And as a great salesperson, when you start to look at yourself as a helper, you're helping great customers find the solutions, but you're also helping the company that you work with become the company that they want to become. And so really, salespeople are like the ultimate helpers. They're helping both sides of the equation, the customers and the company solve their biggest problems. And so when we look at it this way and we start like really presenting solutions, I think we build a lot more trust. And I think we just like our conversations resonate better with homeowners or property managers or facility managers or whoever else it is that's buying our services. So we figure out these needs and desires early on with our Q&A. But what we then do is we really build a proposal, whether it's a landscape maintenance contract or a really complex install, like the one here in this picture. We have to figure out a way to make sure that they see what the future is going to look like and how it's going to be better after we deploy this solution that we're proposing. And so I think lots of landscape companies have this habit of, I think almost having like a corporate scarce mindset in the sense that we just have to have the best price and then we'll get the job. And I think I see this play out all too often in businesses. Like the bottom line is almost dictated by the leader's belief in price sensitivity. And the problem here is we all buy things day to day in our lives. We all set value on these things based on our ability to pay for those things and based on, the need that we have for those things. And so you got to be really careful that you're not selling landscaping the way that you would buy landscaping in terms of value. If we're selling a $200,000 backyard, that $200,000 means something different to the buyer than it might to you as the seller. And we have to keep that in mind. When we look at their needs and desires, we have to help them understand how we'd solve them. But we also need to be really confident in understanding how much they can afford. And that's why creating budgets as early as possible is so important. And then we can kind of match up their budget with the complexity of their needs and desires and find a good balance. And I think what we need to be able to do is show them a really good, compelling future state that sort of answers the needs and desires and meets the budget. And the salesperson who can help them do that best, I think, will always end up being the most successful. So as we approach this, we want to be able to show them incredible drawings, whether it's 3Ds. We want to show them what our work typically looks like on properties like theirs if we're doing maintenance, before and after of similar properties, how we took a property from, being in poor condition to being in stellar condition. We want to talk about our awards that we've won. We want to show projects that we've used in the past. And we want to talk about testimonials and give them some addresses to drive by. We want to do whatever possible to make sure that they can see that future state. And then I think we want to use really compelling terms to remind them of where the value sits. We're going to invest $100,000 in the backyard, but we're expecting, based on the value of your home, that this is going to create a $200,000 increase in the home value. And so we start to justify some of their needs. Handling objections, we've talked about this again. Objection handling is built into the process. We want to be asking good questions so that we can uncover objections and almost deal with them before they have to kind of state them specifically as an objection. And so when we do get a real objection, we want to know how to handle it. We want to be able to repeat it back to them, empathize with that objection, and then offer something meaningful that helps them see that not only do we understand this, but we deal with this every day. These objections are not unique. These are just typical objections that we hear, and we have typical methods to overcome these. And I think the smoother you are at doing that, the better. That requires some role play training, without a doubt. Practice makes perfect. Just working on this with your peers will definitely make that much, much smoother when you get in front of customers. Now, getting to our big topic here, the art of the close. Getting to the close really relies on doing all of those things that we just talked about really well. And, we're, I think, 10 or 12 weeks into this program right now. We've focused on each stage up to this point. The art of the close, though, this is all about understanding what your closing techniques are and then practicing these as much as possible. And so again, back to role play training, I'd highly recommend that you work on some of these closing techniques with a peer in your company, with another salesperson, maybe that's also selling, or somebody that understands the customer profiles really well. I think there's a lot of value in being the customer or being the salesperson. So trading back and forth really makes a big difference. So a few tactics here. Assumptive closes. This is, ultimately us trying to just say, we know that you're going to move forward. When is a good time to get started? We've got time in the schedule 6 weeks from now. I know that you're really interested in getting this project started. How does that date work for you? Does that seem reasonable? We're just really kind of giving them the push without really leaving any room for error. And, I wouldn't use this every time. The customer gives you the right to do this. This is, again, something that we earn. If we've got that much momentum, we can use the assumptive close. Otherwise, I think sometimes it can kind of feel pushy. And so we want to use this one really mindfully. The summary close. This is like recapping everything that you've talked about, reiterating all the value that you're driving, ensuring that maybe you answer the last objection if there is one. But this is us really kind of taking everything that we've talked about, doing a bit of a summary, and then getting them to agree that everything is taken care of, that the proposal's in order, that they're comfortable with everything. And now we're just simply saying, what would be the next step? And that one I think is actually, more common and probably more applicable. Assumptive closes work when you've got like a certain personality, but I think the summary is probably a little bit safer with most deals. Urgency, certainly all of these can be, combined, and urgency is one that I often will layer into assumptive or summary. Urgency is, using schedule or using a discount or a timeline to really ultimately like draw a line in the sand and get a signature. Like, hey, I just had another project that was supposed to start in 3 weeks that has delayed for a month. I've got a hole in my schedule that's perfect for your job. If we can get this signed up today, I'm going to make sure that I do all of the legwork in a much shorter period than usual to get the job started. How does that sound to you? And that creates the urgency to get the yes and get the close and get the deposit check or whatever it happens to be in order. So that urgency one is I think one of the best when selling project work for sure. A trial close. This could be you sort of starting to almost test the waters a little bit. This is like, we've done a little bit of work and pricing. We've kind of come up with some solutions that match their needs. And now we're just trying to like make sure that they're completely comfortable before we really ask for the close or before we really get the close. And like, this is often common when you're selling really big area maintenance contracts for property managers or facility managers that may have a lot of properties. I've definitely noticed you got to be a little bit more tactful here. You got to make sure that you ask them over and over again if this plan or this proposal really like hit the mark. Is this everything you had in mind? And the reason we want to be careful there, if we don't approach it that way and they just simply take a price and then somebody else has a little bit better, more fulsome approach to the pricing, the packaging, the service or the scope for the service, they'll win just because they went at things a little bit more tactfully. And so we want to be really careful when we're asking for the business with certain types of clients. And I think, kind of using a trial type conversation makes a lot of sense. Being direct, there's nothing wrong with just simply being direct on smaller jobs. If somebody is getting a price for an irrigation system or maybe a turf maintenance package or weekly maintenance at their house for residential landscaping, being direct is fine. We've put a proposal in front of them. Maybe there's a few options, but we're just simply asking if they're ready to move forward, if they'd like us to get this scheduled into our routine schedule. And I think that's an appropriate approach on smaller contracts. Nothing wrong with just getting to the point. We need a fast yes or a fast no on small projects. We can't waste a lot of time. We can't be following up too many times. Obviously, follow-up matters, but we have to be direct, and just getting to the point, I think, is welcome in most cases for small ticket purchases. Alternatives, often making sure that when we do put prices out, that there is an A or B. I think that really helps a lot. If the A option seems a little bit too expensive or like overkill for whatever reason, we've got our fallback plan. And I think it's kind of nice when, particularly for maintenance contracts, when there is some flexibility in the way that you present the pricing, because I really just think that it's nice to have that alternative conversation. It just feels a little bit more natural. I think more choices leads to higher close rates, less likelihood that somebody else has put a different offer on the table that you can't really speak to or contend with. So the alternative choice model, really important. Again, very useful when you're looking at project work or maintenance contracts. Now or later, I think now or later is a really powerful one in certain situations. I think sometimes we've got these customers that are just undecided people, and you kind of pick up on this when you're selling. They want something, but they're not sure if they want to part with the money, or they're not sure if they want to deal with the upheaval on the property or whatever it might happen to be. Maybe the timing's just not right for a corporate budget in the case of a commercial customer. I think ultimately this is you trying to create a compelling reason why it's better to act now. And so if you're going to use the now or later close, make sure that you've got like this dialed in. And again, role play training helps. This is going to be different for every ICP, every buyer persona that you're ever going to speak to. If I'm selling a swimming pool in the fall, my now or later is going to be like, hey, I know it's not convenient now, but just picture yourself swimming next spring instead of looking out the backyard, seeing us building the pool. There's ways to do that for every customer, but I think you want to practice those. You want to make sure that you create desire when you use now or later. That's ultimately what you're doing. You're trying to create desire, or, maybe you're helping them avoid a little pain. But ultimately, as you've heard me say many times, us humans, we only move because we want something, which is desire, or we're avoiding something, which is pain. And so pain and pleasure, which one are you going to use to get that now or later close to kind of resonate powerfully enough to get them to act? Scarcity, this one, I think it works really well. It's not always believable. I think the better you are, the better it works. We've only got a few spots left on the route in your neighborhood. We've only got 2 slots left for building swimming pools. This is us basically saying, hey, we're so good that we're so booked up that you're lucky to get this opportunity today. And now you have to do this in a way where it's believable, and you have to do it in a way where you don't appear to be overly confident. You want to be humble about it, but you also want them to see that, you are in high demand. And so I think scarcity is really powerful if you're really good at it, but it does require practice. Otherwise, it kind of feels fake or pushy. So again, lots of practice, but super powerful when you're good at it. Value added close, I think, is, us somehow throwing in a bonus or more services or some big benefit to acting right now. Like if I was selling fiberglass pools and it's the spring, I'm going to say, hey, guess what? Because we just ordered 25 pools, I can give you your pool right now for 15% less than normal, but I'd have to get that order in before the end of the week. And so I've got this big opportunity. Again, it kind of crosses with like scarcity. It almost caught like the now or later. But here what I'm saying is there's all kinds of value if you act now. I can't offer this after this week because the pool order is going in and it's a one-time a year opportunity. And so like there's these neat little things that you can kind of enter a meeting with when you do it really mindfully, which I think a lot of salespeople just don't show up thinking, here's what I'm going to say to kind of get the close. The what's holding you back. This one's important. Like once you build rapport, you get the right to ask people as a trusted advisor and how they're thinking about this. And like when you get good at this, you can ask people, like, is there a reason why you're thinking that you're not quite ready to make a decision? Is there something I can help you with? Is there more detail? Is there a change in design? Is there more information needed? Would you like to compare pricing? Like just being completely transparent with them and being more of a consultant or more of an advisor, I think often works. And being really good at that and doing that in a way where you're actually being the trusted advisor instead of the pushy salesperson is an art. And again, this takes a lot of effort. This isn't one that I think is easy to master, but I do think if you're an experienced seller, if you're doing a lot of role play training, I think this what's holding you back question or series of questions is really, really powerful, because you truly are embedding yourself in the decision-making process and you're helping them help themselves, which I think is a unique position to put yourself in as a salesperson. The testimonial close, again, this is us talking about other satisfied customers, all the great things we did for them, what the outcome looked like, really like powerfully telling a story just as we're asking for the close. And I think oftentimes it's easy to do if we leave a couple of small objections on the table, then we come back to those objections, talk about how a similar customer had the same issue, what ended up transpiring after doing business with us, how we solved all of their pain points, really kind of took their problem and turned it into a big win. And just as we kind of finish telling the story, we get to offer to do the same for them. I think it's a powerful way to close. It works really well with commercial customers. It works like commercial maintenance and snow. It works really well with backyard swimming pool projects, like high ticket, big contracts. I feel like some social proof, some testimonials, some other stories, just as you go in for the close, kind of builds that momentum and reassurance before they decide to move forward with a big ticket purchase. So it's a very powerful one. We're social beings, us humans. We're happy to hear about how others have overcome problems that look like ours. And I think it builds that confidence on the bigger ticket projects and recurring contracts. Service guarantees, this one it works in some situations. I think snow really referring to how you guarantee service and how you ensure that their business is open 24/7. Like some of those real power statements as you kind of come in for the close, like, are you ready to move forward, and remind them, of what it is that really makes you different. Like using something like a guarantee, I think is powerful. It's not one that I like to use often. It's more like something that I think I like to cover with the Q&A. But if this is the biggest issue that this customer was facing, was like a service guarantee issue in the past, a big snow contract, maybe where they wanted 24/7 monitoring and they wanted a customer portal where they could see your machines and understand everything that's happening in real time. And if you've got a real, kind of highly focused property manager that's making the decision, that service guarantee would be the perfect thing to mention just as I'm going for the close, because I'm ultimately guaranteeing that he's solved his problem, or she, with this contract and this proposal. And I'm reiterating that the guarantee is the contract. This is what I'm offering, is this guarantee. And if I ask for the close connected to that with the right person in the right situation, I think it does kind of create the opportunity that we're looking for, which is, the confidence for them to say yes. The follow-ups, every type of buyer persona or customer profile is going to require a little bit different approach here. We don't want to badger people with follow-ups. I think that can almost cause more damage. We don't want to seem desperate, But we do want to follow up and thank them when they give us some of their time. We want to make sure that in those follow-ups that we're really good at somehow reiterating the value that we offer. And, ideally we want to use language that kind of supports the closing tactics that I just covered, one of, or maybe a combo of. But ultimately, like, our follow-up should always be thankful. It should always highlight value. And I think it should create some urgency for the next step. And I do think that oftentimes in our follow-ups, we don't create that very well. So that may be something like you using a calendar app so that people can just right from within that follow-up email, book the next time with you. Or maybe there's a link to a signature page on a contract that you've already reviewed. Or maybe there's a deposit invoice. But have a call to action in your follow-ups that is really kind of moving them to something. And I think that in itself has a huge impact on closing. When we have follow-ups that are just simply thanking them for their time, I think they acknowledge that and think, oh, I need to get back to this person or do something next, but there's just no clarity around how. And so it's often, trading emails or nothing at all. And what we want is that opportunity to get a conversion. We want them to move to the next step, in which is, either approving something or booking another meeting, depending on what stage you're at in the sales process. And I mean, last, I think, impact on closing. I think there's a lot more opportunity in landscape to get more referrals than most companies think. I'm a big believer in investing in marketing, regardless of whether your business is largely referral based or not. But ultimately, like, you got to remember the referrals that you get are always going to end up landing on your website. And if your website isn't really showing the company that you want to be or that you're positioning yourself to be, then your referrals are probably disappearing. So let's make sure that, the first stop for your referred customers or prospects is a great website with a clear conversion pathway. What do they do when they get to your website to book a meeting with a salesperson, a designer, a maintenance advisor, whatever titles you've got in your company? Once we kind of understand exactly how we're going to treat referrals, I think then we have a much better opportunity to convert a lot more business from referred prospects. A couple things that you might consider. I get the opportunity to get in the room with thousands of landscapers each year, which is, a tremendous gift. And I'll tell you this, the companies that do the best with referrals have a program around referrals. They don't just get referrals accidentally. And, embarrassingly enough, I'll say that was my method for many years, was do a great job and kind of count on customers to show off their incredible garden, and referrals will just happen. But the truth is like, when you get programmatic about it, and when you offer incentives to customers at the right time, just as you're finishing a project, or just as you're meeting with them, like for a health check on a maintenance account mid-season, when we ask for these referrals in the right way and we give them tools to do it, I think oftentimes we get many, many more referrals, and much better referrals. An idea that I heard this year was a design gift card for up to a certain value that they were giving to their finished projects. And then when their neighbors would be over having a look, or their friends for a dinner party, they had these design gift cards, and they would make these gift cards for a fairly large amount of money. And, if they're charging 10% design fees, and that's $10,000 on a $100,000 project, there was a $5,000 discount. But, how else would you get that many calls, and how else would it be that trackable other than creating a program? And, it worked incredibly well for this company. It was a pretty interesting story. And just how much of their business, 95%, I can't even remember the exact number of their revenue, was just coming through this gift card program. So I think, being creative, being consistent, creating a system that you deploy and it happens like clockwork every time you finish a project. And I think really, putting a little bit of creativity on this can go a long way. And I think we all know that, referral deals are much easier to close, and they're typically, much easier to work with. The reality is great customers come from great customers. And getting good at this, I think, will make a big difference in your business. So next week we have a takeover. Next week we're going to have Benji Carlson and Matt Balfe from Breakthrough Academy here on the weekly mastermind. They're going to give us a really deep overview of SOPs, which are standard operating procedures, specific for landscape and snow. They're going to talk about how to create your standard operating procedures, how they impact your day-to-day, how they kind of change the level of accountability, and how they really more or less drive more autonomy into the workforce. So, they're going to talk about how to make it happen, what the impacts are. I think they do a fantastic job at explaining standard operating procedures. They help hundreds and hundreds of customers create standard operating procedures in a systematic way. And they're going to kind of share what that system looks like over the course of just 30 minutes. So lots of value in this one next week. Hopefully you can make it. I think it's going to be a really, really impactful session. I'm going to take a few questions here right now. I see Chris Maury from Las Vegas. How many times would you follow up with a client, and how long would you wait to follow up? That's a really good question. I think this depends, again, on whether it's install or maintenance, and of course, whether it's residential or commercial. Very, very different. I wouldn't overemphasize follow-ups with residential customers. I think they get annoyed when we follow up too often. So I would say if we put a proposal out and we send a quick follow-up immediately thereafter, that's just respectful, giving them like the opportunity to book another meeting to close. But I think if we're following up and it's getting a little quiet, I think, waiting 1 to 2 weeks is good. I would say that 2 weeks on the outside, 1 week on the inside, somewhere in that range is healthy. Ultimately, we're looking to get a yes or a no. And I think often with follow-up, salespeople are afraid to get a yes or a no. But the truth is, like, a fast no holds a lot of value as well. We don't look for that. We want to avoid it like the plague. But, if it's looking that way and we can't turn it around, then we're better to get the no and clean up the pipeline and focus on some better opportunities. With commercial, I think it's very different. Like what we need to do is we need to understand what their buying timeline looks like. And then we need to kind of structure our follow-ups based on that. So if I'm pricing a snow contract in July and they tell me, and it's cold outbound, and they say, yeah, but we have a 3-year contract. We have a full year left in our contract. I still want to go and pursue that deal because who knows? They may have a service interruption this year. And so I'm going to follow up after I prepare the proposal. I'm going to get the meeting. They're going to get that proposal. I'm going to follow up with them. But that follow-up strategy is going to be quite different. Like, I'm going to follow up and review the pricing, make sure they understand it. Then I'm probably going to put a a date in the calendar for the following spring to do another reach out. And, obviously people don't like booking meetings that far out, but I'm going to put a reminder in our system to do that reach out. So I think it's very dependent on the customers, but I would say less is more. I think a lot of times people are emphasizing follow-ups. Any advice for closing maintenance contracts for HOA scenario when decisions are being made at the monthly board meeting with property managers and we are not present? That one's really, really common, Jamie. The best thing you can do is ask for the opportunity to be at the meeting. If they say no, and there's no way that you can present your price at the HOA meeting, what I'm hearing and seeing are some companies are starting to use presentation format proposals that the board can go through on their own. So again, this is you building out a really, really professional sales deck and embedding your pricing and your options in that deck. They get a printed version of it as their proposal, and they also use that printed or that presentation as part of their board meeting to approve. Ideally, just ask if they won't let you sit in, ask about if you could join via Zoom. I think a lot of board meetings are starting to do that as well. But that's a tough hill to climb, selling to a group of people that don't get an opportunity to meet you or really hear the narrative around your proposal. And in that case, you have to make sure that you've got really, really strong level of conviction on the part of the buyer that you're dealing with. And at least get them to let you know that they're putting you forward as their recommended supplier ahead of that meeting. Hopefully that helps. Again, no questions here right now. I'll move on. We've got 2 days of in-class training available coming up again this fall. I'm going to be on the road. We're going to do a few different programs. We're going to do the 5-day academy program, which is really focused around how to use LMN and get the most out of it in your snow business specifically. So we've got these 5-day training programs on becoming certified at using LMN. We're focusing specifically on snow. I'm also out on the road this fall. We're going to be doing the business growth transformation workshops. These are going to be 2-day mastermind sessions. We're going to be Dallas, Chicago, Detroit, Boston. These are going to sell out. I think we're capping the room sizes at 300. These are definitely going to be different than last year. So if you were out last year, you can count on this being very different. We're super excited about what we're going to focus on here this year. So hopefully you can make your way out. And as always, you can follow me along on LinkedIn and Instagram. I usually try to put some content up there each day. Questions. Dennis, we don't have the GTA. That's the Greater Toronto area for those of you in different areas. We don't have a 2-day session planned yet, but I think we are trying to line up one Canadian date. So watch for that on the events page on the website. Great. Well, I think that's it, everybody. Have a great afternoon. Thanks for joining. And again, I'll see you next week.